I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Um, Thank you all for coming. Welcome to Coffee Chats. My name is Jordan Gentry Nelson, and I am the Director of Programming here at Big Medium. And Coffee Chats feature leaders in the creative community sharing their personal and professional experiences to inspire others pursuing careers in art. And these events, if you're not familiar, fall under our Creative Standard Programming, which is the professional development wing of Big Medium. And normally these coffee chats occur monthly, but we have increased their frequency to happen weekly just because of the need for connection, community, inspiration, and keeping art as a part of our regular daily lives. So thank you all, especially, again, those of you that I see in the chat that have come weekly and consistently come to these coffee chats. And we're so excited to have Deanna Miesch here with us, not only because she has an inspiring career as both an artist and art therapist, but because of the expertise and tools that she has to share that may be particularly helpful for people during this difficult time. So with that, Deanna, hi. Again,
Good
uh,
morning.
can you tell us about your path to becoming an artist and art therapist?
It was a very odd one indeed. So I got my BFA in studio art from UT and graduated in '91. And my senior year, I started asking people, just quizzing everyone, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do for a living? How are you going to make some money? And a couple of people happened to say that they were going to study art therapy, and I had never heard of such a thing. And so I happened to accidentally then find a binder in the dean's office of all of the art therapy programs all over the country that just hung out apparently in the reception of the dean's office. It was not an advertised thing. And so, you know, that was sort of in the back of my mind. And then I graduated and I got a job. I was a manager at Armadillo Clay for a good couple of years. And my folks kept saying, Deanna, when are you going to get a real job? I was perfectly content. I was, I worked 40 hours and I would come home and I'd do art. And, it was pretty chill in Austin back then. This is before the boom. And so I didn't really need that much money. And, but eventually, it was kind of a combination of my parents saying, when's the real job? And then I started having these eye issues. One of my jobs as a manager was also weighing out chemistry for like smaller amounts of chemistry. And so I apparently my eyes had a problem with all of these raw materials. I started getting these eye problems, which for an artist is like, a nightmare. So I thought, well, maybe I'll start to look into this art therapy thing I was told about. And the more I looked into it, I realized I had accidentally begun on that path, in that I had pursued a number of different arenas in studio. I originally did photography, I did painting, I accidentally got into ceramics because printmaking was full and then never left. So I had all of these different mediums in my tool belt. And I'd also taken an intro to psychology. And so really all I needed was a handful of other psychology prereqs. So I just started taking them. I changed jobs. I worked at Amder Gallery, and which was also not very good for my eyes because I would sanding frames. But it was fun. And then I started looking at grad schools and picked the Art Institute. And so I did leave Austin for about 4 years. There was at the time no program in Texas, and there currently still is no program in the state of Texas for art therapy. So everyone who's interested has to pretty much either move out of state, or now there are some online programs, but that was not, online did not exist in
the eye issues, did that come from glazes, from mixing like the
my theory actually, so when I was in undergrad, I was a perennial procrastinator, and anyway, one day I was doing a late night firing out of one of the gas kilns, and every now and then it'll like blow out, and basically it flashed back at me, burned off my eyelashes.
Oh my God.
I can't remember. I think it just got my eyelashes. I don't think it got my eyebrows. But ever since then, combined with like, little bags of, magnesium or whatever, all of the raw materials for glazes or whatnot, you're not going to get it all in the little bag. Some of it's going to go airborne.
The hazards of art making.
Yeah. No, I believe me. I've had some detox over the years, and I'm like, oh wow, all the photography, all the hands in the silver, Anyway, yeah.
Because we love it. I love that you talked about that you had to have this like understanding of a broad amount of mediums and techniques and disciplines, and how
it's actually encouraged simply because when you're working with clients in art therapy, you need to be able to be flexible. Everyone coming in is not going to be familiar with art. Most people aren't, and you don't know what any one person's thing will be. So you really need to be able to be well versed in a number of different mediums. I didn't meet that many people in art school, interestingly enough, that did practice multiple mediums. Like, it seems like most of my friends, they found their thing and that was their thing. I don't know if that's still the case, but I mean, in my art, I work with a lot of different mediums. I get bored. Maybe I want to, I'm doing one thing for a while, I just get in different moods. And so I shift gears. And so I luckily that came naturally. I'm also the middle child. No, what am I saying? I'm not the middle child. I'm the youngest child. What I meant to say is that I'm the mediator in my family. I don't know how that exactly happened. I don't, but that also helped, because believe me, I had never even contemplated becoming a therapist. But it was interesting to me. It was interesting. I also like the idea of being, the dream was one day, having a private practice and having more control over my schedule, so that maybe I didn't have to work 40 hours, because I, believe me, did figure out that it's kind of hard to have creative juices flowing when you're tired. And I certainly didn't imagine ever becoming one of the 1%, which was at least the percentage in art school when I was in art school of those that make it. You had 1% that made it, and you had 1% that got the teaching gigs. So 2%, 98%, everybody else did something else. So I just never imagined, living off of my art.
Nice though that you found a way to still like have a creative career and bring your art into that. With that, how does your own practice come into therapy and how you're working with other people? I think you already talked about how you can transition from different materials, but just talk about your own practice and how that plays into it.
My own practice with my art making?
Yeah, and how that comes into play with your therapy career.
So I think that's changed a bit too over the years. So when I was in art school, this was late 80s, early 90s, and certainly a lot of my work was in the realm of socio political kind of things that, and really and still is, but topics that maybe weren't addressed very much, and so in some ways were I don't know, to use a better term, edgy. It wasn't like I was, doing naked performance art or something. I never did that, but maybe art that was, it wasn't flowers, you know. So, so I went to grad school, and I chose the Art Institute because I thought, well, no one has heard of art therapy, but they've all heard of the Art Institute, so I'll go there. I'll go there. And and I went, and I just assumed everyone would be artists. Actually, about half of the class were artists. And when I say were artists, I mean they actually saw themselves as artists. They lived and breathed art. That was what was most important to me. So I just assumed that was how it was. But really, and most art therapy programs are like this. They will take maybe about half studio majors who then fill in with psychology, and then the other half is psychology that fill in with art. And there are certainly lots of people that, maybe pursue psychology, but really are artists, but not necessarily some of the people I was interacting with. So I did have a few mentors over the years, both during grad school and post grad and after, of art therapists that really, still lived and breathed art, and pursued both of those paths at the same time. Because a lot of the folks who maybe were artists initially didn't necessarily keep pursuing art. So, because it's hard, it's hard to keep putting yourself out there, so I luckily had some really good mentors, and eventually when I started my practice, my private practice in 2003, my goal was to really get back into putting more time in my art. I had moved back to Austin by then, and my first private practice I opened over on Tillery Street in East Austin, and shared a studio with a number of other artists, and my good friend who Benet Rocket, who is also an art therapist and artist. So as far as my art, at that point, I really kind of felt like, up until that point, I almost felt like I needed to keep those two lives separate. And I think some of that came from maybe interactions with different professors, or at various job placements. I had this one psychiatrist nightmare of a fellow that, I gave him my business card once, and he looked at it and he's like, "Oh, you're one of those people." Really kind of traumatizing. But I really, I started to, when I had my studio that was, of my design, and I had a place to do art, where I could really, it wasn't just an office that had carpet, and believe me, I've worked in lots of places where I was the odd man out, and there were no other artists, there were no other art therapists. That was just not their world. So I was constantly in this place of educating others, and uh, and maybe didn't necessarily want to, stand out so much. I wanted to blend in a little bit. So once I started my practice, I put some of my art up, and it was a little like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? But it really seemed, it was fine. I think it really helped some of my clients to feel more comfortable. I think that, it also maybe helped some of my clients understand me a little bit more. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was kind of
Yeah,
long
that was,
out, but
I kept having other questions coming up throughout you talking, and then you just answered it. So
okay, good.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you felt like you had to keep those separated, but then eventually kind of brought them together. I think for a lot of people that have an arts career, you kind of have to switch gears between the two. And a lot of people, I think, assume that like they just flow together really naturally. But it is hard, like you said.
Yeah, no, I still know plenty of art therapists who really do keep those things separately, and I think it's just someone's comfort level, and maybe what they were exposed to. If I hadn't had some of those mentors, of art therapists that really still um, pursued art, I'm not sure where I would be. I mean, I wanted that, but I needed to also see it in the world and feel comfortable with it. Maybe I would have eventually gotten there on my own, just from sheer will, but it helps to have mentors. Lay the path.
You've said that you believe anyone can be an artist, which I love. How do you encourage people to discover their own creativity?
So one of the things I do enjoy most in doing art therapy is exposing people who wouldn't otherwise have done art to do art. And uh, I used to work with maybe more kids or adolescents, and now most of my clients are adults. Actually, mostly adult women, but not adults, and and not necessarily that many people come to me. In the past, I was on insurance, so I'm not anymore, but I was on insurance, and so I was literally this random names that given to someone by their insurance company. So they didn't know me from diddly squat, and I was having to then say, well, you lucked out. Guess what? And but
would see you as just therapists, not even art therapists. Is that?
well, they were coming for therapy. They weren't necessarily coming for art therapy, and so I was introducing them to this idea, um, and I'm proud to say that just about every one of my clients I have been able to convince to do art, which is something, because if you don't already realize, there are many people out there with art trauma. Uh, and you probably know exactly what I mean when I say that. The art teacher at one point or another in grade school, or, even later, uh, where you're doing it wrong, right? Or maybe it doesn't come from the art teacher, it comes from some uber talented peer next to you, and you just shut down creatively, because you're now comparing your work. So many people who've come in my door have fallen in that category, and that was why they didn't do art anymore. And so it was something to just even get them to consider, you know well, maybe they were wrong. you know my philosophy is that, yeah, everyone can be an artist. Maybe you haven't discovered your medium. Maybe, you went through some art trauma and you need to kind of, try again. Um, uh, the idea is that, yeah, that there's not a wrong way to do art, and that, and we are our own boss of our art. We get to decide what it means, right? um, so many people think art therapy, that the art therapist tells them what their work means, that they analyze their work for them, and that's, uh, maybe there are some people that do that. I do not do that. That is not my philosophy. My philosophy is the artist themselves are the boss. Now I might try and help them to discover new things, or try and look at things in a different way. But I am always starting with, they're the boss. Um, let's help you discover what this means for you. And so coming in with as open a mind as possible is the the most successful way I have of reaching anybody. Um, many things can mean lots of things at once, right? Color can have different meanings in different cultures. And so they can certainly have different meanings for an individual. It's not all like black and red is death and blood. Red can be joy. Black could be, quiet. I mean, you just don't know. And if you just make assumptions about what something means before speaking to the artist, then, even that can shut down that person. If I start telling them what it means, and they haven't even yet discovered what it means to them, I might prevent that from ever happening. Or maybe they had an idea, but I come in from left field. Well, maybe they don't want to share that anymore. Maybe they start to question that. So it's really important that I really try and meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I love that you're empowering people to become their own artist. Can you offer some tools or things that you've seen as be really successful, especially for people that may be struggling during this time right now?
Such an interesting time right now. I was on the phone with my girlfriend last night. We were commiserating, we both have kids, and they can't see anybody now. It's horrid. Um, and and I said, I know this is not helpful, but we could be having this conversation in the fall. We could be having this conversation a year from now. We don't know how long this is going to last, which is really intense.
The uncertainty
Uh,
is really scary part about it.
yeah, yeah. So, I try not to get in that frame of mind very often. I really, because it really isn't helpful, trying to stay as present as possible. Uh, you know, uh, in I mean, these times can certainly make anyone anxious, and if you already have those tendencies, then I hope folks are getting help, because it can really do a number on you. Um, so finding ways to stay present, because those are the only times that you can actually have happy. uh, Anxiety is all about, well, what's going to happen, and depression is all about, well, what already did happen. And happy is right now. That's the only time you're ever going to have happy, is right now. So it can be challenging to find happy when you're in a quarantine, but there are subtle things, maybe on your walk, if you get to take a walk. We're not in places where we're fined thousands of dollars for going out of curfew, here in Austin, Texas. So um, there's lots of ways that we have it pretty good right here. Um, Ways to help yourself during a pandemic. Never thought I'd be asked that. So there are some art therapy tasks, if you will, that are have always been kind of my go-tos. There are many art therapists where they are all about tasks. Do this and do that, and I've always kind of taken an approach of trying to help people to work more intuitively, so that they really can find their own voice. So that's always been my passion. But there are some sort of exercises that I've always found to be helpful. So there's I'll do my best to describe them. So one is a very simple thing. It's called the scribble exercise, and essentially what you do is you try and clear your mind. So it might be that you do some breath exercises, maybe you do some movement, maybe you, however you can try and not have anything in your mind. Find a point to gaze at, something. And ideally it's done with a non-dominant hand, and you traditionally it's done with like chalk pastel or hard pastel on a big paper. Ideally, and this is ideal, I don't necessarily always do it ideally, but ideally maybe you have an easel, right? So you can be standing in a physical posture, so it's you can move close and pull back and really kind of be in your body. So it's a more kinesthetic experience. When it's kinesthetic, there's actually completely different brain chemistry that happens than if you were working tiny. So essentially doing movement with the body and then transferring that to the page. So I've loosened up, I've gotten my chalk pastel, and I make a scribble, and I'm either not looking at the page, or I'm maybe even have my eyes closed, uh, and I'm moving my hand. My hand is in line with the instrument, the drawing instrument. So it's as one, if you will. Okay, and I'm making a scribble that is not too tight. It's not too I don't take too long to do it. It can't be too simple. It can't be too complicated. And then stepping back and looking at it from different angles, as if you would on a cloudy day. Look at the clouds and try and find images. So finding different images, maybe jotting down what you see, looking at it from every angle, and then finding something that you want to kind of push and reveal more. So it might be that you leave the scribble intact and you start another image, or you work right on the scribble. It's a great way to, one, loosen up, to have because a blank page is intimidating for many, and right now our mind is I don't know, everyone's in it. It's an interesting time quizzing people what's going on with their thinking, with their concentration, so people are in different states of capability right now, but I often will cheat with my scribble. I'll do a mini version in just like a journal. So I'm not getting my kinesthetic experience. I'm not working with the soft pastel or anything, but it's still a really nice way for me to just start. And inevitably, because that process is not coming from a place of intent, things that are maybe on my sort of subconscious or even unconscious level will begin to be revealed. Maybe not necessarily in the first one or the second one, but eventually I'm going to see something that really means something to me, that speaks to me about maybe my feeling state, or I don't know, goals or something, dreams, and I can kind of go with that. It might be, it's kind of like a visual journal for me, and so sometimes I'll also then just journal, right? 5 minutes. I mean, I'll often, when I journal, I'll write down the time and when I start, and I'll just write until I'm done, right? And then I'll look at the clock, and I mean, it might be that I'm only sat there for 5 minutes. It doesn't take long, but it is sort of along the lines for me of like Julia Cameron, Artist Way, when she would write her morning pages, get the pond scum off the surface. I can use my journaling, my scribble, as a way to get my pond scum off of my brain. And so that always makes me feel better. There's another art exercise that could be done in either with like some kind of a box, a container of some kind. It can also be done with masks. And it's the idea of inside versus outside. If it's the inside of the box or the inside of the mask, what I keep to myself, how I see myself, the outside, what I reveal to others, or how I think others see me. Those are always interesting things when I'm working with clients, for them to be able to start to see themselves. You know, this time we're all stuck inside. We're all uh, you know, spending a whole lot more time either alone or with our families, if we're quarantined with our families, or whoever we're quarantined with, right? And that can get uncomfortable. You know, it's you know, we often might use the world and our interactions and different relationships and tasks and things we do as a way to um, um, maybe distract ourselves and not see our things.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting that now people are, through this thing outside of their control, having to kind of see themselves. And it can be an opportunity to, you know, find ways to work through some of that. You know, sometimes people need a little help along the way. I think a lot of artists get that art making is therapeutic, and that's probably why most artists do it. And so with that, in some ways, we have an advantage in that we have this other language that we can utilize to uh, explore. And you know, but even artists sometimes need a little help. So hopefully people do, you know, if they really do need help, recognize that, which is of course a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness, to ask for help when you need it.
Thank you so much for sharing those 2 exercises. That's so great.
Sure.
I have so many other questions for you, and we're like running out of time. This has been so great. Can you tell a story about a favorite recent project or a rewarding moment in your work? Something positive that happened recently that you can share with us. Doesn't have to be recent.
Sure, there's something positive out of my. I can't think of anything right now.
Well, tell us
again in a little bit.
okay.
Maybe something will come. I'm sure something will come.
What's inspiring you right now?
So it is interesting, all of the different things people are putting out in an effort to either help themselves or help others through this process. And you know, many of it coming from professionals, many of it coming from, you know, just anyone. And that we have a platform to get it out there. You know, people are so creative in their in their lives, and you know, we often are so busy, we don't necessarily share all these things, but there's a whole lot more sharing now. You know, some of it can get overwhelming if you just, you know, you can't just sit on, you know, Facebook or Instagram or, you know, whatever, but a few minutes here and there, and people have really some nice things. It's not all unpleasant.
There's a lot of generosity going around. I think you're part of that, for just being in this conversation and sharing tools and seeing people wanting to step up to help others is.
Yeah, I mean the face mask thing, like wow, you know, uh, my daughter made a face mask for me before I, ventured out for the first time to go to the grocery store. She like made it a point to. I wasn't gonna, it was before the face masks were being used, but she just felt like it's my mom. I want to protect her. So, she made me something out of her Harry Potter fabric. And then we got some from Belelu.
I got
And
hers too from Bailey.
yeah, yeah, we have a family set, and um, you know, now I forgot what your question was, but yeah.
Just things that are inspiring. I think that that's great. That there's a positive side to everything that's happening right now.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot more positive. We don't know how long it's going to go, and we don't, with the political climate, we don't know how low it has to go before, you know, uh, you know, things start to shift, hopefully more positive. Um, it's, so that can be unsettling. But there's always, I mean, the environment right now. Yesterday was my birthday, so my birthday is Earth Day, and yesterday was the 50th anniversary. I'm 51,
Wow.
and oh my gosh, seeing, are we going to get used to clean air and water? Are we going to start to expect that? That's completely exciting.
I
Uh,
think that we can actually prove that the Earth can recover
yeah,
in
so
such
quickly.
a amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of sludge at the bottom of the sea that we don't want to know about right now, but uh but yeah, it's possible. Um
I love that you're born on Earth Day. I feel like that's very appropriate for how much like love you put out into the world and the way that you care for nature and the environment. So that's sweet. I kind of want to jump into audience questions now
Ooh.
because we have a few. Calder has all the questions. She has three, so I'm going to go through her questions. This is addressing something you said earlier about insurance. Some states pay for art therapy insurance and some states don't. What states are the best for art therapists to practice considering this, and what states have a demand regardless?
So here in Texas, I'm an LPC, which is licensed professional counselor. And it's through that license that enables me, if I wanted to, and I did for many years, to be a insurance provider. Um, Licensing is different. Each state has its own regulations. So in California, for instance, it's the license people need there is marriage and family therapy. And I actually had planned, my original dream was to live in California, but I didn't know about that until I was already in grad school, and then it was too late. Because I basically would have to go back to graduate school, which I'm not willing to do, to work in the state of California unless they change their laws. So, but things are shifting with licenses, and I know that there's a a lot of folks pursuing national licensing for art therapists, but that has yet to come into play, and it's way too complicated for me to even answer that question, unfortunately. But I'm not sure about her thought that some states don't pay for it. It really depends on the license. that an art therapist is enabled to have in the state. As long as they have a license that's billable, then insurance has to pay for it.
Cool. Thanks for answering that. What principles can an art educator utilize from art therapy to better connect with people?
I, not having done art education, I don't want to make any grand assumptions, but I would think that that idea that I was talking about earlier about really helping each artist discover what their work means would be important. Um, art education presumably is a little bit different from history and art historians. I read about art history and like say, or maybe even a more contemporary article about an artist by an art historian, and maybe the artist is no longer living. Well, they're making a lot of assumptions about what the work means.
Yeah.
And that, if the artist is dead, they may not have a choice, but there's a lot of artists that are alive. And in art education, the art, when I was talking about art trauma, that it would be great if the new recruits that are going to be our future art teachers can find ways to make it so that students maybe do appreciate their own voice more, and I think there's a place for technique, and well, this is this technique and this is how you do it, but there needs to be also freedom. Art educators are actually kind of on the front lines with students in schools because of the state of mental health in this country and around the world, really. uh, Therapy is not as available as it needs to be, and we're more realizing it now more than ever, that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to get help, and but it may not really be there, and going to the art room in your school may be one of the few times that you get to play, and play is highly therapeutic, to not be told how to do things for an hour. That's radical.
Yeah.
All day long someone's being told what to do from birth to whenever. You need to get up at this time, you need to dress this way, you need to do this equation this way, you need to write a sentence this way. That's wrong. We're constantly told we're wrong. So art could be the place where that doesn't exist.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Totally, I completely agree. And I ask this question almost at the end of every coffee chat, and gonna add a little twist to it with Calder's question. What advice do you have for other artists or people pursuing this career? And then Calder's twist on it is, what advice do you have for students in particular interested in this career path?
So there's certainly a lot of students that are already know about art therapy now. There are a number of years back, actually, there was a time where my husband watches detective shows, And there was a week where at the end of the week, he said, Deanna, twice this week on two different shows, they had an art therapist. I was like, what? And at one point in recent years, it was among the top 10 new professions for of like, the things that were recommended to pursue, because we need more therapists out there. And certainly art therapy can go in so many different directions. You could be an art therapist working in the community. You could be in a school as a school counselor or as an art teacher, but have that background and be able to do what you need to do. You could be in private practice. You could, I don't know, be a missionary in Africa. I have no idea. You could, whatever you want. You could like make a grant to do whatever it is you want, if it's not already in existence. So I think it attracts a lot more people now, and more people are really appreciative of a creative arts background and education. As far as what do I recommend for people wanting to pursue this, I'm biased. I still think the art should be primary, but if psychology is your thing, go for it. So those two paths are still the way to go. You need to, but regardless, you need to be well versed in a number of different medias. You can't just be working in one media. You need to find ways to volunteer, to get some experience, because any grad school is going to want to see that you actually want to do this. Therapy is not, becoming a therapist is not for everyone. And it just doesn't fit some people's personality, even if they logically think it should. And doing therapy on their own work, it's really important that you go into this field having gotten to as healthy a state as you can before you're working with people. I mean, how can you possibly help someone if you're a wreck? You can't. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad therapists out there. That's all I'll say about that.
The last question
was that. I don't know if I answered the question, but
yeah, I think that was good. Calder says that she has all these questions because the artists she works with have these questions. So thank you for speaking on the topic.
Yeah.
The last thing is from Valerie, and I don't know if this was answered or not, but she wanted you to describe the box mask exercise a little bit more. We only have a few more minutes left, but.
So, I mean, it can be, there really isn't a wrong way to do it, I tell you. But when I say the inside being how you see yourself or what you keep to yourself, it's the more private, the you that no one else knows, or very few people know. And so if that's the inside of a box or if it's the inside of a mask, I mean, it's just a different aesthetic. I do like it being a container because, you can close it. It can be also a place where you can put things that are private, maybe private thoughts or worries or, and there's many, different manifestations of that in different cultures, like in the little Guatemalan worry dolls, you tell your worries to, and tuck them under your pillow. So you can use it in different ways. As far as maybe discovering what there is from that, if you do something like that, I and this I think is the case with any art, that once you have made what you have made, to sit with it a while, maybe jot down thoughts. Maybe it's associations to it, maybe it's a poem, maybe it's you know literally what you think it means. That's going to change in a given day. You sit with it. I have pieces of mine over the years, 20 years later, I look at them like, whoa, how did I not see that? There's something new in this. It was under my nose all the time, but I wasn't that person yet, so I couldn't see it then. We are constantly changing. Every 7 years we have different cells. We are literally a new person. So each day we are a new person. So each moment we're a new person, and there's something new to discover in what we've created too.
Well, I think that is a great way to end.
Okay.
I just want to thank you again, Deanna, for being a part of this and for sharing your expertise and wisdom and advice with all of us. And thanks to everyone that came. Cheers. I drank all my coffee almost.
I did not. Sometimes I only get half a cup a day.
It's because I was making you talk the whole time.
It's okay. It's probably better days when I have less coffee.
Okay, well, I'll let people sign off. If anybody has any questions, I can, let's see, one more. Thank you. Are you on Insta? Calder asks.
No, I'm not on
Insta. Find you.
I tried Instagram. I'm like, what? I can only do this on my cell phone. I don't want to look at my cell phone.
You and Shay. Shay's not on Instagram either.
If they ever make it for the computer, where you can actually post things from the computer, maybe I'll get on it. No, you can't.
Yeah.
I tried.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been posting these videos through Instagram TV, which I'm also new to, but it only lets me do it on the desktop because the video is an hour long. So that's...
Well, maybe they've updated it. I'll check it out again. Because I wanted to do it, but, because everyone says, particularly all the artists are like, Instagram. But I don't understand how, if I have to, use my cell phone to make a photograph of my art to then, and I don't want to give away my art, right? So I want to put my name somewhere on it, which involves getting on the computer and making the signature and all, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Should it really take half an hour to post one thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I always feel sad leaving these chats and leaving you behind. But thank you so much again. I'm gonna.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Have a good day, everyone.
All right. Bye. How do I?